These are the 10 most overrated Castle Nathria cards. Essentially, for this video series, as always, I took community ratings from third-party sites. So in this case, the Countess was rated 4.1 stars by some subsection of the community. And then I compare that to the results of the card. Is it actually being played or not? So I rank order the cards based on their rating and then rank order them based on their popularity in the meta, and the cards with the largest difference between those scores are therefore the most overrated according to this particular methodology. Now, obviously, there are reasons cards might be overrated or underrated. For instance, maybe they're in a bad class and the card itself has some strengths that might be, utilized at a later date, but maybe the class around it sucks. So the archetype doesn't have enough support yet. And that's the sort of stuff we're going to talk about as we talk about these cards and take a look at some of the data I've included here. So this does not mean these cards are dead or doomed forever. It doesn't mean they're inherently bad or broken. It just means that right now, so far, throughout Castle Nathria, these cards are overrated. They have disappointed up to this point. And in particular, I actually took this data before round of balance changes. I wanted to look at the original 2-week meta post-expansion. So I captured all of this prior to the changes. So the Countess, for instance, has been buffed. She's probably even better than this data represents, but still isn't particularly good even now. Countess was rated at 4.1 stars by you guys, and in reality is played in less than 1% of decks, but actually is outside the top 75 for played rate, and frankly is only really even being played there because people have fun playing the Countess. This would be even lower if it were based on nothing but popularity. Like win rate wise, the Countess is not good. Within the deck she's in, she has a 45% drawn win rate, which is actually better than the deck itself. So the Countess's win rate is 0.6% higher than the decks she's in. What that means is the Countess might actually be a pretty decent card. She is actually making the deck a little better. If Pure Paladin gets some future support, if the meta maybe slows just a little here and there is some hope for this one. Since she is a little bit better than the cards around her, she might actually be being held back a little bit by the rest of Paladin. But still, there might be a cap on the success rate here. Chat says, expensive, random, low impact, a worse Prince Liam. Okay. Just don't give her any hope, man. Art is too scary. She's intimidating. Well, she is gonna be the thumbnail for this video. So listen, why did we get the Countess wrong, right? Well, number one, I'm surprised anybody did get the Countess wrong. The sentiment from my channel, at least, like in the YouTube comments, I didn't think especially high for the Countess. People said, oh, this is kind of slow, kind of awkward. I was surprised to see this one land at 4.1 on third-party sites. So there may have been some divisiveness across different parts of the community. Yeah, I didn't think people thought this was going to be awesome. In fact, I later went on to name this what I thought would be one of the 3 worst legendaries of the set. And I think so far she's lived up to that labeling. She's not been good, and Paladin has been very, very bad. She's a little better than the deck. So if Paladin does get boosted and she retains that better than the deck status, and we're also going to get an additional expansion in rotation, so there will be more pure Paladin choices. Maybe not like specific pure synergies, but just more Paladin cards to pull from. I wouldn't be shocked if she becomes a solid card, if not, a great one. I don't think she'd be a great card, but might be solid, might be playable, kind of like one of those like tier 2, tier 3 deck ranges. Next up is Crazed Wretch. This one got 4 stars from the community. Crazed Wretch is in 1% of all decks, and much like the Countess, that's really for people just trying to force Warrior. If you went purely by win rates, this card would be almost in 0 decks, because Warrior has also been very bad. Now, Warrior's gotten a little better since the balance changes. It's definitely improving. It's kind of trickling up to tier 3 instead of like tier 4, bottom of the barrel status. But this data, again, was taken before that. So Crazed Wretch in the initial expansion period was not good, not played, had a 42% win rate, drawn win rate in the decks that it was included in. That's 2% worse than the decks it's included in. So Crazed Wretch actually has been pulling down a lot of the Warrior decks. Might actually be one of the worst cards in Enraged Warrior. That's a drastically big decline versus the deck. So it seems like this is the kind of card that's like awkward or sitting in hand or hard to tempo out. You know, you need to activate it. Maybe it's too reliant on activators. Maybe it doesn't do quite enough burst damage when you need the burst damage. Something here is definitely hanging up the wretch, even if you consider the bad context that it's included in. So I don't know if this one has as much hope. I gave this one 4 stars too. I thought, you know, any minion with charge and damage output potential was going to be nuts. It has absolutely not lived up to those. Why do you guys think this card has been so weak, even in Range Warrior? 2-mana card that requires activation. Yeah, it's just not good enough on its own. I mean, I when I played the deck, I did feel like anytime I played the sort of 2-mana 4 health stuff, it gave a good baseline to build off of. But maybe this one is not a baseline that's really useful in that scenario. Like, instead of giving you armor from Armorsmith or buffs from Anima Extractor, this one's just giving you extra damage. And maybe that's not good to encourage like a turn 3 swing or building up on that value. You're not really snowballing off of it. It's just kind of a one-time bonus, which maybe isn't quite enough. Certainly looks overrated so far. Next up was Harvester of Envy, rated 4.4 stars, which stunned me. I thought people thought this card was bad. I was hard on this card. I gave it 2 stars. As you see, I thought it was awkward, slow, like too demanding. You need like 3 or 4 cards to set it up. Even then, it doesn't always work. Like, I could just rifle off a list of problems with this card when I reviewed it. And I don't remember getting a lot of pushback there. There were always a few people who were like, this card's insane. It's going to steal everybody's win conditions and so on. Theatar ended up being that card, really, right? But I was really shocked to see a 4.4 star rating. I was like, what? In reality, 1% of all decks. Again, that's actually, a popularity-based bump. People like playing Thief decks. If it were purely based on win rate, that would be even lower. This card has a 44.5% win rate. That is actually lower than the deck. So this is one of the worst cards in the deck, almost 1% lower than the deck's win rate. So this doesn't even really seem to have a lot of hope. It's not a particularly good card, even in Thief Priest packages, actually. Drawing this one seems to make you worse. So that's not a good sign for the build around Legendary, but I get it, because you got to wait forever to work with it. It takes a lot of mana to get all that stuff done at once. It's just really, really clunky sort of card to use. So, but it's like 3 steps. Spend mana to steal the card, right? And then spend mana on Envy. Spend mana again to play the card. Maybe discounted, maybe not. And then not only that, but your opponent has to have already not used the card. It has to be meaningful to steal it, right? Like, the payoff isn't even always there. So it's, 3 steps with marginal upside. And I don't think that's ever really going to feel good enough. Was really shocked to see this on the list at all, but not surprised that it's performed so poorly. All right, next up is Steam Cleaner. And this is one I did have a big delta with my audience over. I felt like many of you on YouTube really love this card, and a few of you gave me some hate. I gave Steam Cleaner 2 stars. I thought expensive tech card that is only good against a very situational set of decks. That sounds like a 2-star card to me, but a lot of you liked this one a ton. Community gave it 4 stars, said this is the perfect answer to Lady Prestor, Druid, and Kazakhstan, which is true. I'll grant you that it is a great answer to those decks, but those decks weren't particularly likely to survive through a new expansion, right? It was only going to be good in those exact scenarios. Now, will that pop up again? It could. Maybe Steam Cleaner will get there at some point. I still think it's a really awkward, expensive tech card. It can be an instant win button in those matchups, but there's plenty of other matchups as well where this is just a totally dead card and an expensive one at that. So it's hard for decks to kind of take this sacrifice. That said, Steam Cleaner's only showed up in 0.4% of all decks, has a 45% drawn win rate, and that's a little bit lower than the decks on average. So people are probably making a bit of a sacrifice to run Steam Cleaner when they rarely do, because he's very rarely paying off and hurting your deck otherwise. So that's kind of what you expect for tech cards that aren't paying off very often. They're going to make your deck worse. And without things like tradable and a cheaper option for this, it's a very risky tech card to run. Keep Quest Priest in check? Well, it's not really very good against Quest Priest. That was one argument I remember hearing a lot on YouTube, but the Quest Priest, a large portion of the time, will immediately tutor their spell into hand. We already know this because Quest Priest is actually really popular right now. Quest Priest is the 6th most popular deck at Legend. And, 5th most popular deck at Legend. And the 6th most popular deck overall, and it's not going away because of Steam Cleaners, right? Steam Cleaner has not risen up to beat the Quest Priest. So, you know, Theatar, I think, became a much better solution to a lot of problems like this. Now, maybe not specifically ones for Steam Cleaner, but as a kind of disruptive tech card slot in your deck, people are much happier to run Theatar, I think, than a card like Steam Cleaner. So, anyway, I don't know. We'll keep an eye on this guy. Usually cards like this don't work, though, just to be fair. Usually cards don't work. All right, so next up was the Forensic Duster. This one was rated 4.3 stars. Duster is in 0.5% of all decks, which is really basically not being played. He has a 48.8% draw and win rate, so really not too bad. I mean, you know, not north of 50% where you'd like to be, but not too bad. That said, people are running him in decks where he probably doesn't belong because he is actually 1.5% worse than the deck's win rate on average. So he's definitely one of the bottom tier cards in any given deck that is running him. So people who are squeezing in the Forensic Duster, it might not be worth it. That's not always true because maybe there's not a better option. On average, just be really careful if you're trying to squeeze in the Forensic Duster. And you know, I think people were hyped about this one because it kind of had like Cult Neophyte vibes, or you played the Cult Neophyte that was in like every deck for a while there in certain metas. And it's like, oh, this really disruptive card, it's gonna mess with my opponent's stuff. But in reality, I think disrupting spells is often more impactful because Cult Neophyte, like, you could drop that on a board with a bunch of other cards and protect them from being removed. So rogues would do that, for instance, like just really cheap battle cries and build out 4 or 5 minions, drop the Neophyte, boom, you can't ramp, boom, you can't remove this, I'm going to win the game. I don't think that the Duster has nearly as much disruption potential because stopping your opponent from playing a minion on curve isn't usually as swingy in a game state as it is from playing a spell on curve, because spells are how they're reacting to your stuff. So he doesn't really exist as that protector for aggro decks. And, you know, who else is going to run him? Does a control deck need this to slow down the opponent? I mean, not really. They probably would rather spend their mana doing other things, drawing cards, removing stuff directly, as opposed to subtly sort of disrupting things. So I'm not totally surprised this one has come in under people's expectations. I did give the Duster 3 stars. I thought he had that sort of fringe potential. He's not even living up to that expectation. Even 3 stars currently is overrating the Duster. I don't really see that changing. This is the kind of card that often gets kind of forgotten and falls to the wayside. And part of the problem is right now, like, a lot of the minions we play are actually summoned by spells. So he doesn't even really disrupt minion summoning that much. If you think about like Wild Seeds getting summoned by spells, Druid summoning stuff with spells. So it's weird that he doesn't even really stop minions necessarily. Synergy is more important than disruption in most cases. Yes, most decks want to establish and deliver on their own synergistic game plan. All right, next up is the Anonymous Informant. And yeah, this one is absolutely tied to the fate of secrets because this is a secret enabler. It was rated 4.3 stars, only in 0.4% of decks, basically unplayed. 43% draw and win rate, but that is better than the decks she's in. So in other words, when you're playing this, it's usually a pretty good play. This is one of the things that is bolstering the deck's win rate, I think is fair to say, because this is a really nice tempo development in a secret class. And that doesn't surprise me. That's why people thought this was going to be good, is those free secret cheats. Those are often the best ways to play secrets. The Kirin Mages and the little 2/1 dude whose name I cannot ever remember that also cheats secrets for free, right? This is another in those chain of cards that have succeeded in those tempo-based secret decks. The problem is right now there's no tempo-based secret decks. None of the secret decks make sense. Rogue in particular, which is the new one, just completely falls flat, even though it has some tempo stuff there. Mage doesn't need to do that right now, and Hunter doesn't need to do that right now. So Anonymous Informant just doesn't make sense, doesn't have a home. That said, this is absolutely one of those cards I think could in the future live up to this potential. I think she might eventually not be overrated because she has that solid win rate, as we can see. She's better than her deck, so she's being held back by secret packages, not the card itself. So as soon as there is a reason to have a secret deck, this seems like it would be a very powerful card in that scenario. So overrated for now, but maybe not forever, if that makes sense. This, I think, is one of the more hopeful cards in this entire list, actually. Cabal Lackey, thank you. That is the name. So next up, and actually I think the next couple cards are basically all going to be cards that are held back by secrets. This is the Ghastly Gravedigger for Rogue, another secret synergy card. This time rated 4.4 stars. It seemed like it was a great way to remove resources from your opponent's hand. So not only do you get to see a couple cards or 3 cards for reconnaissance and gaining information. That's always a nice bonus. Like, ooh, they have that in hand. Wow. But also you get to pick their best thing and hide it away and maybe stall out their Wink Edition or stall out some on-curve play, all of which seemed great. Also on curve after secrets, that sounded awesome. I gave this one 4 stars, 4.4 from the community, super high. In reality, of course, as we know, rogue secrets aren't good. They feel really bad. They don't feel good enough. Kidnap's terrible. The whole package just doesn't really seem to sing. And therefore, of course, the Ghastly Gravedigger is not getting played. It has miserable drawn win rates. It's basically in line with the deck. So, I mean, it seems like it'll be a fine card. It's just that rogue secrets are not fine. So it is absolutely tied to their fate and therefore doesn't look very good right now. Oh, I will say one thing about this. I know a lot of people, I remember from the YouTube comments, a lot of people thought you were going to be able to see your opponent's entire hand. I didn't expect that. I certainly in my review didn't indicate as such because that's just not how Hearthstone works. We pretty much always have choices of 3. We've occasionally had choices of 4, but 3 is certainly the default. I was not surprised with that. I still thought it was going to be good, right? Still a lot of value, but that might be a reason some people did bolster the score a little higher. They might have thought like, oh, I'm going to see every card they have, and it's going to give me so much information, and I'm always going to get exactly the card I want. That might be part of its high score, but I don't know how much that really helped. So yeah, I think absolutely overrated. I think this one's prime overrated. And here's its cousin, the Private Eye, at 4.7 stars. Crazy high rated. I think this card was actually the... let's see, Private Eye. Yeah, this was the second highest rated card of the entire expansion. Second highest rated card of the entire expansion. I also gave this one 4 stars. I thought pretty highly of it. Again, it seemed like one of those cards where it's just doing so much. It's cheating 4 mana into play, which is kind of like drawing 2 cards because you're getting them out of your deck and you're playing them immediately, right? So you're getting a 3/4, getting 2 cards drawn and 4 mana additional spent. It just seemed like such a big dump of stuff. I think we have to agree that's just absolutely bonkers. But again, absolutely held back by the quality of rogue secrets. This one's only a 0.7% of decks, 45% drawn win rate. It is notably better than the decks. You know, this does look like a strong card in Secret Rogue. Like this one helps when you're hitting it. It's definitely making your deck better. But again, held back. So if Rogue had good secrets, I have no doubt this card would be insane. It looks really, really strong. It passes all the eye tests. The data supports it. Would absolutely be nuts. Just completely crippled by the weak rogue secret package in this case. Completely held back. I think this is the number 2 card. This is Gigantotem. This is another one I was really surprised to see up here, but this was rated at 4.2 stars, but actually is in only 0.2% of all decks. That is the 116th most played card. So in the bottom 20 cards of the expansion, despite being rated at 4.2, basically totally unseen. As you can see, the drawn win rate's terrible. Not only that, but it's actually terrible in Totem Shaman. It's actually much worse than the deck on average, almost 2% lower here. So it seems like the Totem decks out there need a faster payoff than Gigantotem, right? I've seen lists, that don't have this and are running like Bloodlust and stuff instead, because this just takes too long to get discounted. So even the bad Totem decks don't have room for this because it's so bad. There's just not enough ways to get totems into play fast enough. Now, that could always change in the future if they print a 3-mana card that says summon all 4 totems or something, right? That'd be a great way to discount this really rapidly. But for now, this one's dreadfully slow and a very bad deck. I gave this 3 stars, kind of that like fringe playability. Certainly has not lived up to that expectation. That is still overrating this sucker. This seemed like the kind of card, anything that get discounted enough, there's shenanigans, there's things, criminal lineup plays, like who knows, but it's not even absolutely close. All right, so the number 1 most overrated card. Do you guys have any guesses? It's going to be really obvious once you see it. It's not maybe the most memorable card, but it's going to be like, oh, yeah, okay. Huh, none of you have guessed it. Okay. It's Magnifying Glaive. It even got buffed already, guys. Come on. It's in D-Matter, which is one of the worst classes, and it already got buffed once, and people thought it was absolutely nuts. Myself included. I gave this 5 stars, and the community gave it 4.7 stars. I still think it's going to be insane. Now, remember, this already got buffed. This is now a 3/2. I'm showing the old version of the card because that's what this data's from. But, yeah, I still think it's going to be nuts. that the aggro Demon Hunter package around it has been pretty dang bad. As you can see, it's only in 0.5% of all decks, has a 42% drawn win rate. That's, of course, tied to the deck pretty closely, but it is 1% better than the rest of the deck so far, so definitely stands out a bit amongst all the other aggro Demon Hunter cards. And I still believe in this. I can't believe this card, especially since getting buffed. My God, now it does 6 damage instead of 4. I just have to believe this card's going to be insane. We've seen this effect work so well so many times with this just crazy reload. At a base, it's a 3/2 now. Like, that's not that bad to play either. It's just, you know, if it draws you 1 card, I think it's decent. If it draws you 2 cards, I think it's great, right? It's just insane. Because, I mean, you look at, like, the Axe and Warrior, right? The 4-mana 3/3 Axe, right? That draws you 3 cards conditionally and on a delay. It takes you 3 turns to draw 3 cards. Whereas this can draw you 3 cards immediately sometimes, right? Or maybe just 1, maybe 2. That's still insane return on value. And this could theoretically draw you up to 6 cards as well in a really aggressive Demon Hunter deck. You know, maybe there's more awkwardness here than we all expected, right? Maybe it's weird to dump your hand. Maybe the empty hand cards Demon Hunter don't work. But I don't think you need crazy results for this one to be good. I think getting 2 cards, 3 cards is a ridiculously good return on your investment anyway, because it's not much of a sacrifice to play this weapon. I don't know. I still believe in this one. I think Demon Hunter has just been held back way too far. It's just really, really hard to play good Demon Hunter decks right now, and the ones that are decent don't need this sort of card. But as soon as that opens up where an aggro Demon Hunter gets the tools it needs, I think Magnifying Glaive is going to be a very, very powerful tool. So I still believe in this one. I still think this will actually hit the 5-star mark, especially since getting buffed. My God. We'll see. But for now, this was 102 spots different. It was the 4th highest rated card, and it lands currently at, or not currently, but at the time of the collection, at 106th for its played rate. Over 100 spots overrated. It goes from the top 5 to the bottom 30, which is pretty crazy. Probably one of the most overrated cards ever, actually, for these sorts of videos. So yeah, those are the 10 most overrated Hearthstone cards from Castle Nathria. Now, again, I know this video always makes a ton of people mad. If you like one of these cards, we're not saying it's dead forever. It doesn't mean these cards are doomed. In fact, the opposite. I think quite a few of these have potential, but so far they have failed to deliver on expectations. Does that mean you were wrong? Yes. You suck at predicting just like I do. No, it doesn't mean we were wrong. There's still plenty of time for these cards to succeed. You know, if you're like me and assess cards characteristically, there's still moments for these cards to shine, right? Some of them I think are inherently not very good, like Harvester of Envy. I don't think this one's coming back, right? But others could still surprise us and live up to expectations.